Jim from Slipknot, welcome back to Ireland. It is my great pleasure to invite you back after 4 or 5 years at this stage.
It's been a while, yeah, thank you.
I guess the first obvious question is to ask is, like, you've been here so many times over the years, do you have any particular notable memories or special occasions that you've had while playing in Ireland over the years?
Not really, because we never really get to spend enough time here. I remember shopping and seeing the statue of Phil, and I thought that was kind of by where we were staying now, but I haven't seen it. But I haven't really gotten a chance to get out and about since we've been here. It's been kind of like a real quick, like we had rehearsal last night and all that, so I haven't really, in the jet lag, so I haven't really been able to get out and explore that much. And I remember, I think we played a festival here years ago, and Jada Pinkett Smith's metal band was like on it or something.
Yeah, with Stone Sour.
Yeah, that's right.
Wicked Wisdom was the name of that
band. Yeah.
I remember that day actually fairly vividly myself. Jesus, yeah. I guess it's interesting you mentioned Phil in it there. Many years ago, I actually had the pleasure I had to meet Eric Bell from Thin Lizzy, one of the founding members, at a hotel and bring him to a venue. And I had the pleasure of carrying his guitar, and on the way over...
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a hell of a thing. But he said to me on the way over, he said that he was flicking through the channels the previous night, and he asked me, had I ever heard of this band called Slipknot? And I said, well, yes, Eric, I absolutely have. I'm quite the fan. And he said, do you know the song Duality? And I said, yes, I do, Eric, absolutely. And he said to me that it was fucking amazing.
Wow.
And the guitar in particular was his favorite part of it.
Wow. So. That's incredible. That's incredible when you hear compliments from like legendary musicians like that, you know?
Yeah, because I know you're big into your classical.
I have, and I've got a chance to, I got to meet Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey a few months back, and we have a mutual friend, and when he introduced me, his eyes kind of lit up, and they had both heard of the band and knew of the band, and that blew my mind, because these are like living legends that to me are unreal. They're like godlike status, I mean, they invented rock and roll as we know it, as far as like modern, like starting from the Beatles and all that, I mean, like just the way you tour and amps and just the whole evolution of it. And the only other time I like brushed greatness like that was I was walking through New York City, and I saw Sting walking with a guy, and I was like, you know what, I gotta try to talk to him. I'm not gonna fanboy out on him, but I was just like, hey, how you doing? Do you have a gig here? And he's like, no, we're playing in Canada. We had a gig last night. And I'm like, oh, damn, sorry. I would have liked to have come see you. And he's like, are you playing a band? I was like, yeah, I play in Slipknot. And he's like, oh, I've heard of you. Great band. And I was like beside myself, like, I mean, guys like that, I mean, obviously they're musicians, and as musicians you can appreciate other musicians, but to me that's like a whole another level of like, music. And I mean, you think back to the Police and all that stuff, and just the incredible songwriting and the hugeness of it all, it's insane. I mean, that's a like stadium rock band that wrote these, amazing, and you being a drummer, like Stuart Copeland's drumming is just, to me, is so next level,
Thin Lizzy have that godlike status over here for sure.
Yeah.
Where did they rank for you, and when was the first time you ever heard them?
Through my parents, they had Thin Lizzy records. First time I heard them, probably before I was a teenager, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's, they were a staple on the classic rock station, and in Des Moines where we came up, so and it was always Boys Are Back in Town, and stuff like that, or Jailbreak. They didn't like dive too deep into the catalog. I don't know really how big Thin Lizzy did in the States. I'm sure they were probably, those two songs were absolutely massive over in the States, but I'm not really sure about the rest of the catalog, but
So I'm speaking to you on the first night of the European tour for the current album, which came out and went to #1 over here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what goes through you mentally and physically right before you're going to go on stage? Because it's, from when I'm talking to you right now, it's like an hour away.
For me tonight, we're adding a couple of new songs to the set from the new record, and what's going through my head is hope I don't fuck them up, because they're new, and we've only played them. I mean, the last time we really played them was when we were recording them, and we got to rehearse them last night, but literally when we play these songs tonight, we'll only have played them since we recorded them one time before, so that's going to be like my big hang up for the evening. But normally it's just, going through a routine, trying to like loosen up and get my head in that zone for a show, because it's, you know, it's hard to switch gears from, you know, 0 to 100, you know, and it's a show, you know. It's not like we're not a shoegazer band. We don't just stand there and you know, I mean, we move around, and it's, you know, there's activities happening and all that. So, you know, I just kind of try to get my head around all that.
Yeah, Irish crowds are very like famously forgiving, so we like the odd mistake or two. I mean, so back in like 1999, Slipknot announced themselves to the world. Like, jump forward to 2020, like the world is literally on fire. War might be looming. Everything feels kind of on edge. Where does a band like Slipknot fit in?
I think it fits right in perfectly with all that. I mean, everything that's happened in this band, it's almost like predestined. It's all, a clown always says, it's like, this is like a movie or a book. He's like, you can't write this. It's just everything's happening like in such a way, and it's timing, and it's dumb luck, and who knows, you know, what the formula is for it. But for me, it's been, ever since I was a child, I felt like this was what I was going to be doing no matter what. Even, you know, in the middle of Des Moines, Iowa, where nobody came from, where there were no, you know, nothing, there was no like kind of success like that, you know. I mean, it just seemed inconceivable, but I couldn't imagine ever doing anything else, or even being able to survive doing anything else. And it's all happening, and it seems so surreal sometimes. But with all the chaos that's happening around in the world, I mean, my world has been chaos for the past 20 years with this band. So, you know, I think there's a good yin and yang to it, and I think every once in a while you need a good bit of chaos to kind of bring everybody back to level. You know what I mean? Humans by nature, if everything's going too well, they find things to be wrong. You know what I mean? It's like we can't have anything perfect. If everything's perfect, then there's an unhappiness that comes along with that. It's sort of like a complacency that's maybe dull and boring and whatnot. So, you know, what is it, about every 20 years everything goes kind of wacky and haywire, and you know, I think we're just at an apex of that. The problem is it just gets more and more intense every time it happens.
Yeah, Ireland announced a general election today. It's an election year, obviously, for Americans. Is it a good time to be on the road, or like how do you kind of feel about everything that's going on?
I mean, you know, I'm a little bit nervous about being on the road. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You know, I mean, I'm concerned about our fans and the safety of our fans. I think about that. Things like that go through my head. You know, I don't want it to inhibit what we do. I don't want it to inhibit people from having a good time, and I want it, you know, part of what we do is to take people's minds off of all these things that happen. I mean, it's therapy for me. It's much like riding a motorcycle when I'm on stage. And when I was a kid, before I was ever in a band or could ever play an instrument, a show was a release for me. It was like something for me to do where I didn't have to think about whatever bullcrap problems I had at school, or, you know, mom won't let me do this or that, or, you know what I mean, or this friend of mine's a dick or whatever. That, you know, it's a release, and it's therapeutic, and hopefully we can make it that way without it. You know, I mean, you got to move on with life. You can't worry about the world around you. You have to move forward, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a blink of an eye, man. We're not here for very long. So you got to make the most of it.
I think it's been very interesting to see Slipknot evolve the way that it has over these years, particularly with the most recent album, which to me, as a fan especially, feels like an absolute rebirth. It feels like a new chapter at an interesting time. At the same time, you've kind of resisted trends. Like, you've not really kind of jumped onto any kind of obvious things that are happening in the world of music. You've kind of kept in your own box. But would you branch out? I mean, like, because I consider Slipknot to be a pop band, and I mean that with the ultimate respect.
I take that as a compliment. I mean, I love pop music. I mean, not necessarily like modern pop music, but like I was introduced to like Britpop. I kind of found that later on in you know, after it already bloomed and happened, basically. But when we first started touring as a band, we used to do in-stores constantly. Like in the UK, we do these crazy in-stores all over Europe and stuff. And I mean, you know, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people would show up at these things, and we'd sit there and sign. Well, they were at the record stores that were opened at the time, and they'd let us pick CDs out when we were done. and I already had all the metal and all the stuff that my parent, I was trying to re-up my parents' record collection and stuff like that. So I started looking for new stuff, and that's when I started discovering bands, like Bjork and Portishead, and then Radiohead, Blur, and Oasis, and all this, and that type of pop music. Aside from like the things like the Police, like I was talking about earlier, and some of the '80s like Duran Duran and stuff like some of the best music that's ever been made. I mean, I was listening to "Come Undone" by Duran Duran like over and over the other day, just going, man, what a great song! Like lyrically, emotionally, musically.
Do you check out much modern pop? Like Billie Eilish was announced to be doing the new
I,
James
you know,
Bond thing today.
I haven't, and that's my fault because I'm kind of jaded on it, and I feel like it's all become sort of like maybe it's not genuine, but I could be totally 100% wrong about that, and that's my own fault for not like diving in and really like getting deep into it. One of the girls at our management company was listening to some Ariana Grande, and I didn't know that that's what she was listening to. I was like, "What is that? That's awesome!" You know what I mean? Like that's got like a vibe to it, And she told me what it was, and I was kind of mind blown. So I'm sure there's a lot of really good like modern pop music out there. I'll discover it when it's time. And usually I'm a little bit late, and I think that's what works for me as like a songwriter or a guitar player, like to not be influenced by that type of stuff and just kind of stay where I'm at and use my original influences from being a child, and going back to like these like guys like Jimmy Page and David Gilmour and Pete Townsend and that whole sort of realm of guitar playing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure. I haven't heard Billie Eilish, but I've heard a lot of her.
She's good. She's good. I guess, like, it's been such an incredible run to date. You guys go so hard on stage. I'm wondering if you've ever picked up any kind of notable injuries or had any on-stage disasters of note.
Not lately, but I did have back surgery and neck surgery from that. I had two crushed discs that was causing my left arm to go numb, and I was like, I didn't know what was wrong. I was like getting really weak on my left side, and I couldn't lift my backpack off my shoulder, and I didn't know what was going on. It didn't occur to me that it was connected to my neck, but I went and saw a doctor, and he's like, yeah, you've got a fractured vertebrae in your neck and two crushed discs, and it's causing nerve damage. So I had two discs replaced in my neck, and then I had one replaced in my lower back, and that's 20 years of touring and headbanging and doing what we do on stage. After a while, it just kind of wears you down. But I'm trying to like do better. I'm trying to exercise more and change my diet so I can do it. It's touring is hard, man. It's hard to find good food to eat. It's hard to get out and actually do stuff and be active because you're so worn out from all the traveling. It's like, do I really want to try to go jogging today? No. I can just flip on my Xbox and play Call of Duty instead.
But there are still people out there who say that being a musician isn't a real job. It clearly is.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of sacrifice, and I've had, recently I've had to try to explain that to some people. It's like the real work starts when you get a record deal and you get out there and you start doing things and you start putting records out, and you have to be thinking about your next record while you're working on the record you're working on, and you always have to be a step ahead of yourself, and there's always something happening, and there's travel. There's, it's hard on relationships, not just personal relationships, but, family, friends. I mean, missing your home, and then it's almost like you have two alternate realities that you live in. You have your home world and then your touring world, and I've put off having a family because I knew that I was going to be gone on the road all the time. So when I go home, it's just like me, you know what I mean? So that's a hard thing for me to kind of wrap my brain around, and it's a little bit difficult sometimes. Some of the other guys, Clown and Corey, they have children and wives and things like that, and they go there. And I'm sure for them, that's a weird sort of transition to make, because like when we tour, we don't just tour for like a month or two and then we're done for the year. I mean, we tour 6, 8, maybe sometimes 9 or 10 months a year. And that's a lot of time being away from home. And over 20 years, it's, I'm starting to realize at the age that I'm at now that it's like, wow, I kind of like have given my entire life to this band willingly. I don't regret it, and I wouldn't change a second of it. You know, I've learned so much. My grandfather said to me, you know, I didn't finish high school and I never went to college or university, I suppose you guys call it here. But I was talking to him on the phone one time, and I was talking to him about, you know, talking to some people in Paris and, you know, just the things that I've done and some of the travels that I've done. And you know, he's a Southern guy from Arkansas. And he's like, well, James Donald, you got an education after all, didn't you? And I was like, you know, yeah, I kind of did, because I think you learn more from interpersonal communication than you would from sitting in a classroom, you know, kind of like, unless it's a subject you're absolutely like enamored with and so fascinated by that you have to know everything about it. You know, to me, I was never good in classrooms, but like talking to people, like sitting here talking to you, like if we got onto a discussion that was like deep, like I could see where you're coming from and you could hear where I'm coming from, and you learn a lot about humans and humanity and everything from that, you know, and they're just different ways, you know, different points of view, and there is no right or wrong answer to any of it. It's just how you kind of bob and weave through it all.
I guess lastly, just in terms of the future, you are of course bringing Knotfest to the UK. You're also going on a cruise.
Yeah.
There's a Slipknot cruise happening.
It'll be my first cruise ever.
Well, when I first saw this, I was just like, hang on, my brain must be like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So why are Slipknot doing a cruise?
I don't know. I hate boats. I mean, you know, you're always trying to find new stuff to do, like we were talking about before. There's always something to do, and you know, it's interesting to me. I think, you know, I have friends who have taken cruise, and like, you know, my late grandmother used to love cruises, and it might be a lot of fun, and to get to play music on a boat, as long as, you know, like we're not listing all over the place and it's like steady seas, then that might be cool. But I have no idea what to expect, and you know, like I'm picturing, you know, a bunch of people in their shorts and laying out in the sun, and it just seems like very vacation-y and like, you know, holiday type atmosphere, but maybe it's going to be totally the opposite. Maybe it's going to be a bunch of people with like, you know, denim vests with back patches, and you know, I have no idea what to. It's going to be interesting.
Okay,
you know?
well, hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks so much for talking to us, Jim. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.